This is a brief introduction to rational numbers. So the first thing, it's really nice, is to look at the word rational, and looking within there, you can see the math root of word of ratio, ratio being a number that can be expressed as a fraction, and once again, you would not be able to have, you have the restriction of the denominator cannot be equal to 0. So what we want to do is we want to think about what types of numbers are rational or can be written as a fraction. So, for example, think about 2, so that's a whole number. It's also a counting number as well. And so I want you to be, as I'm doing this video, to kind of stop the video or kind of anticipate how would you write that number as a ratio. And so, once again, you can write 2 as the fraction 2 over 1, because 2 divided by 1 is equal to 2. So thinking about it, some other types of numbers, decimals. Do you think decimals can be written as ratios, or are they irrational, which means means not rational? So can a decimal not be written as a fraction, or can be written as a fraction? Okay, so we know that they can be. So for example, 0.3 or 3/10. So if you can say it, you can also write it 3/10. So a decimal in particular, we were studying this week about types of decimals, so we know that this is a terminating decimal, is a type of rational number, or an example of a rational number. Obviously, a fraction, for example, 1/5, is a rational number because it's already in, fractional, is already in a ratio. What about integers? Okay, well, I can think about something like -3, and I can write this as a ratio as well, -3 divided by 1. And just a reminder that integers are positive and negative whole numbers, and that also includes 0 in there. So we've got fractions, integers, terminating decimals. What about percents? Can you write a percent as a fraction? Sure thing. So let's say, for example, you had 60%. So 60 over 100, and then you can obviously simplify that as well to 3/5. Other things, so we've got fractions, percents, and let's see, we've got terminating decimals. What about repeating decimals? So if you had something like 0.3 repeating, so a repeating decimal. Oopsie. So a repeating decimal, and we talked about how to convert those this past week, 1/3. So 1 divided by 3 will give you 0.33 repeating. So all of these are rational numbers. So now let's think about what would be not rational, something that you cannot write as a fraction. In 6th grade, you studied about the concept of pi, and this is the ratio between the circumference of a circle and the diameter. That's equal to pi. And if you did this division, it's actually going to go on forever and ever, and it never repeats and never ends. So, sometimes we'll say it's approximately equal to 3.14, and it goes on 1.59, and it never repeats and never ends or never terminates. Now, there's a couple of other numbers that also do this. There's some more that you'll learn when you get into higher level math, but for right now, some ones that would do is like square roots. So there are some square roots that will be rational. For example, the square root of 4 is 2, and we know that 2 can be written as a ratio. But there are some square roots, such as the square root of 2, that if I were to take that, oopsie, it's now, my calculator's now decided to turn itself off. Took the square root of 2, and I did that. It's like 1.142135, and it actually doesn't stop there. It just ran out of spaces. So it's going to continue to go on and forever and ever, and it doesn't repeat. So one thing that could make something irrational is it never repeats and never ends. And these are just 2 examples, and there are more as you get into other upper level math. But this is just a brief introduction on what are rational and not rational or irrational numbers. So once again, anything that can be written as a ratio is going to be rational. So I think you know some other ones, so you can kind of practice with that and make sure you know how to convert everything into ratios.